Hello, everyone. Welcome to Woven today. We're so glad to have everyone here. By way of announcements, exciting after we finish our time together today, there will be free food out there. So just eat, hang out, chat, do all of those fun things. In service today, John and I are going to talk about everyone's favorite subject, which is politics. It'll be fun, insightful, so we'll be talking about politics. So next week, though, because it is the week before a certain thing on a Tuesday that's a little stressful, so we're just going to watch a movie, and it'll actually be Luca. If you guys haven't seen that Pixar movie, very fun. So we'll meet in the fellowship hall and watch Luca next week. And then the week after that, for those of you who were here a couple weeks ago, April Joy will be back, but this time with Tim Whitaker from the New Evangelicals. So they will both be here. I'll be talking to them, so I'll be asking them a lot of things around, this certain thing that's coming up on November 5th, as well as will something called New Evangelicals even work? So that's kind of where we're headed if you meant. So yes, and as Rafa said, time change coming. So we just want to say a very special welcome to all of you, regardless of your race, your gender, your socioeconomic status, your feelings about the Bible, your feelings about church. Some of you may think churches are a cult, and we're glad you're here anyways. So, welcome.
And speaking of being uneasy and nervous and all of the feelings about the election, the songs that I'm going to be singing over you are both originals, written in two very different times of my life, but still kind of have a similar ground idea, per se. So sit back, breathe, let these words and this music sing over you. the sun and the moon and all of the stars need you to be who you are. This is no time to lose your mind when all the world is walking blind. Open your ears, open your eyes, find your heart, don't leave it now. This is no time to lose your mind. The sun and the moon and all the stars beg you to be who you are. Yes, the sun and the moon and all of the stars need you to be who you are. See the rainbows in the sky, treat them as your God, and don't lose your heart, not this time. This is no time to lose your mind. 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 This is no time to
I could not remember if you said 2 or 3. There was an internal panic. I'm like,
Hey, everyone. Hey,
hi.
welcome. Good to have you here.
I know. I'm only here all the time. It's fine.
I was just thinking when you're introducing, I was thinking, I like your voice.
Oh.
Hey, that's a nice. You have a nice voice.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Well, hey, everyone. This is election talk. The election gab. I don't know.
Yeah. Kind of a check-in, really.
Yeah. I think anxiety is a real thing for a bunch of us.
Yeah.
And I wanted to start just with this idea of the Electoral College. And the reason I want to start there is because, well, you'll see in a minute, but it's about what we can do since
Right.
we're where we are in
Yeah.
the state we are in. But for those of you who don't know, most of us are in favor of abolishing the Electoral College.
Mhm.
Like, it's a really
Outdated system.
outdated system. You know, it's in Article 2 of the Constitution, so it was there from the beginning of the Constitution. And what it is, it's the Electoral College, if you don't know, is one member for every member of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Mhm.
So if your state has 8 members of the House, it's those 8 members plus 2 more for the senators.
Mhm.
And so what that does is there are 435 members of the House of Representatives, and then there are 100 senators,
Mhm.
together 535, and the District of Columbia gets 3 votes. If you're counting with me, 538.
Yep.
So that's why we need 270
Yep.
to name a president. And it was really started because the states with smaller populations wanted to have more say.
Yeah.
And so in the South, particularly where they had slaves, they could count slaves, of course, as 3/5 of people for purposes of the House, and then you had your 2 senators, and you get a weighted system.
Yeah.
Every other election in the United States that well, no, most of the election, all the other federal elections in the U.S. are by majority.
Yeah.
And then there's this one. So the reason I say that is, as we talked about last week with Steve, there are really 7 swing states right now that are going to swing this election one way or the other, and we're not in one of them.
Right.
So, Logan, here you are living in Kentucky, and your vote isn't worth squat.
Yeah, probably not on the presidential level, but I will say, because every other type of election is done by much more of what other policymakers call a ranked choice system, right? So there's a percentage, and whoever gets the highest percentage wins the results. Obviously, in an ideal world, that would be what we would want for a presidential election.
Right. Yep.
But I also would add, considering one of the people, current governor, vice presidential candidate Tim Walz was able to accomplish with a 1-seat majority in his state of Minnesota. It kind of gives me hope of why local elections are important, because I'll just list a few just for the sake of time.
And we can vote for our local, for
Right,
our
right.
senator, state senator, and
Right.
for our the members of the Kentucky legislature for the House.
Right.
And if we could, right now there's a supermajority of Republicans, but if we could have maybe a stronger voice there, then maybe something could change.
Yeah, because I just think about it like with Minnesota, where they only have one extra, in this situation, seat that's following his party, which is the Democratic Party. But with that, they were able to get universal free lunches, breakfast and lunches for kids. They got a child tax credit up to $1,750, which, on the federal level, we let expire. They banned gay conversion therapy. We all know the benefits of that being banned.
And we can really root for that.
Right.
Like that's
Yes.
big.
Yeah. I lost what my next one was, but regardless, that kind of gives us the picture of what can happen on a local side of what we can get across the finish line if we can actually live into our values, which is really what John and I want to talk about today, is why some of these policies are values that we have now versus what they were before. And I do remember what I was going to say. In Minnesota, they codified Roe v. Wade to where there will always be access for women's rights there in that state.
Unless there's a federal
Yes,
ban.
unless there's a federal ban.
Yeah.
But for the good news is, for people there now,
Yes,
their
that's right.
rights are completely protected
Yes.
at the state level. So isn't that an interesting...
It is.
With 1-seat majority,
Yep.
those were the things that were able to be done, which is why voting locally actually can make a huge difference.
And it's possible we could be in that same spot
Oh,
i-
yeah.
in the federal government,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
which would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, money and power make that so tricky. On the federal government level, it's funny. I'm reading a book right now called "Locked in the Cabinet" by Robert Reich, and he was the Secretary of Labor for the Clinton administration. And it's so I'm only like 70 pages in, just talking about all the back and forth and how actually hard it is to get something done on the federal level, even though you have the title of Secretary of Labor. It's an interesting thing, right? So there's so much back and forth. And at the time in the Clinton administration, they had 12 years of what, it's funny, right? A different party had blown the debt and deficit. This was a conversation in the early 90s. not that it's not a conversation now, they have blown the debt and deficit. So like there was this huge thing of like new party in, they've got to solve the debt and the deficit crisis created by the other party. Like that's the pressure they've put on themselves. And I'm like, oh. And so like there's all this conflict of interest in all these things they want to do. And like there's this funny little like 3-page exchange where basically they say the same thing over and over and over in this round table and trying to create a federal budget. So isn't that interesting how it goes right in from the inside?
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
And we really do want to, we're allowed, there's certain things we're not allowed to do
Right.
as a church.
Absolutely.
So we're not going to endorse
No.
any particular candidate right now.
But we
can-
should say to vote your values. Not what Matt said, but vote your actual values. Matt made a joke to me earlier, and I literally cannot repeat it because it's so cringy.
I can say it. Vote your biblical values. The what, real Bible? Oh, the real Bible. Yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
Man, I just feel so much. Do you all ever
There's
get
a-
that sensation? It's like when someone says the M word, it just goes right down your spine.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it just kills me.
Trigger Avenue.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
are
yeah.
living on Trigger Avenue.
Yeah, I am. But isn't it interesting with very little majority what can actually happen? Yeah. And I think that's something else that we've been gaslit into thinking, and it's a weapon to keep us out of activism and change, is that, oh, well, we just don't have the votes. Like, how many times have both political parties said that phrase to not do something? Oh, we just don't have the votes, to kind of get us into this complicit silence and not live out the values and the things that we care about and advocate for the changes that we want to see changed, right? Like,
Yep.
we want America to, because at least you and I don't want to speak for everyone here, believe that climate change is the existential threat
Yeah.
for our time.
That's
We believe that. So they want to be like, oh, well, we don't have the votes to do this thing. Well, no, that doesn't stop us from advocating for change. And because we're not binary thinkers, we also know that that is a global problem. So we want to lead by example to help move the entire world
That's
into a
right.
better, more efficient way so that we don't overheat the planet. That's just one example.
And that's right. And so one of the things we want to do in these next few minutes is just talk through some places that we would like to see as goalposts.
Right.
These are places like, wouldn't it be great if we could get to this goal?
Yeah.
And so one of those is the far-fetched idea of getting past the electoral college.
Yeah.
And there are, Tawana teaches different kinds of voting systems, and there are plenty of them. I think almost all of us would take anything over what we have right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Steve was talking last week about how hard it is because it's a constitutional amendment, because it is in the Constitution. So you have to get 3/4 of the states.
Yep.
And so you're asking states to give up power.
Right. Right.
Good luck.
Yeah. Well, and he also advocated for a version of ranked choice voting, which I alluded to earlier. That's why I brought that one up, because he
Yeah.
alluded to it last week. He didn't call it that last week, so.
And
I
in
alluded
ranked
to it.
voting, you actually rank the candidates, and so
Mhm.
you get certain amounts of points per
Right.
what number you give them.
Right.
And then there are different ways of doing it, but one of them is then you take the top 2 numbers, and they have a runoff, which is what happened in the Georgia
Right.
senatorial elections last year, because they work on that idea.
Yeah, and can I tell you why I like that system? Is because right now, and we just saw this in this past election cycle because we have a 2-party system, that we basically didn't have a primary process. Both political parties kind of foregone. One pretended like they had one, but they didn't. And the bad part about that is that's where their feet get held to fire, because they have to talk with each other about ideas and values, and that's where our voices get heard. So therefore, even though we're in this electoral college system, they're forced to say things to people like us, and they are held accountable for promoting those policy ideas to us. And so it'd be great in a more ranked choice voting way, because then you have to debate and have conversations with people who think, not just within the two-party system, but people outside of that system who think different things and bring forth different ideas that people may like. And so it actually gives more voice to each of us in different values, you know, because each subject they're going to have to compete with multiple different ideas rather than just, here's this one main talking point, here's this other main talking point, which is
Yeah,
where
and
we're
we
kinda
saw
wanted.
we saw it play out this year
Right.
like rarely before.
Oh, yeah, no, this year's was,
It was really bad.
yeah, I would call it an egregious level. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, yeah.
It was sad because now we're in a thing where we don't really know. There's a lot of I don't knows in this particular cycle
right.
on the federal level.
That's
On the
right.
local level, it's a little bit more clear what people are pushing for. A little
So
bit more scary.
That's one goalpost, is moving towards a more equitable system.
Yeah.
Because right now, we have a system where, as often as not, the person that wins the most votes does not win the presidency.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's just a fact. Steve provided the chart last week.
There you go.
Literally, the
Yeah.
last time that it was fully aligned for a certain party was the 80s. That was in the chart. I mean, it's just the numbers are the numbers.
And so, man, we'd love to see that.
Yeah.
That's a goalpost. Let's go to a new topic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do something not controversial,
Yeah.
like gun
sure.
control.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's a goalpost for you?
Oh, man.
And so this isn't Beaumont's position or Woven's position.
No, this is my position. You know, I mean, I'm really, really socialist on this subject, so I'm just going to put that out there right now. Like, I'm not a pro-gun person at all. I have respect for the fact that my ideal wouldn't happen, and that's fine. That is fine with me, but I definitely think any kind of assault weapons, just they got to go. Like, people shouldn't just be able to buy those. I also think if we're going to continue in this system with them, you have to have licenses like with a car. You have to be able to, just like you have to update your license. You have
Is
to
it
update your
crazy
registration.
that you have to have a license to drive a car, but not to use a gun?
Well, and it's
Right?
funny, right? Because
That's just crazy.
you can lose your license for not wearing a seatbelt. Like, not even just speeding. Like, you can lose your license if you get so many
So
offenses
many, yeah, that's right.
with not driving with the seatbelt. Like, that can happen. And so that's like common sense.
And
me.
and we have examples from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Japan has a system where you have to have a license to have a gun.
Yep.
And you have to have so much training to do that, and it works. Oddly enough, it works.
Yeah, it does.
So that's one thing.
Yep.
You alluded to what Tim did in Minnesota, but speak specifically about that with red flag laws.
Yeah, so I mean, I would call like red flag laws as like step one.
Like, this should be obvious.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, like that's not even a license. That's just you have certain indicators where if a person is unwell, they're on a no-fly list, that their weapons can be stopped, and if they post controversial or skeptical things that may imply them to cause people harm, people can go and confiscate from them. It just is like step one. And I will say, I think, and I don't really want to go down this rabbit hole, but social media has pushed some of these things for all the good that social media can do, which it can be used for good. This is probably one of the areas where it's a little bit harmful, is it gets out of people post things because they think it's funny, but really they're dangerous. And then it has now created this thing where it's like people don't know whether they're not healthy or not, but a lot of the last recent shootings, the key indicators have come from social media.
Yeah, that's right.
And so there, so part of with red flag laws is that people can check that and they can confiscate based upon people's mental wellness in that way.
So that might be the 20-yard line if we're on football, if we're doing the goalpost.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe the 40 is assault weapons. And later, I think the license might be the goal line.
Yeah, I mean, I would just ask this room, wouldn't you feel safer knowing people had to continually register and update and record and, you had to be able to do the basics, right? Like, for example, if your vision is going bad, they take away your license. Like, there should be indicators of if you're not well, that doesn't mean everything. And again, this is really hard, right? Because it's constitutional, and that's where people hide behind. And that is hard. Amendments are harder than we'd like them to be. They're harder than we'd like them to be.
Yes, they're so much harder than we would like them to be.
Yeah. I'm being politically correct there.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, that's nice.
As I started with my opinion of take them all away. So yeah, I did real good at the top, didn't I?
Australia.
Right. Yes. That is something they do. And again, just as a note, this is just my opinion. Please disagree with me. Like, I actually welcome disagreement. I welcome conversations. I become a better person when people disagree with me on certain things and we have healthy conversations around them. This is just where I've come to. And a lot of it has to do with, right, like, just an overall fear I have. Like, there are just times that just the general feeling is unsafe. It probably came from my bullying as a child, if I'm honest. I haven't really sorted that out with a therapist, but that probably makes the most sense to me.
We don't have another mic, but are there anybody else have something on that particular issue that they wanted to say? You shouldn't buy gun. Yeah. You can just. That's yes.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Well,
funny?
and I mean, as much as anything, there are loopholes that allow you to buy guns without having to go through the registration process.
Yep.
And that's just, I mean, that should be so obvious that that's a bad idea.
Right. Yeah. Isn't it funny? In almost everything we're going to talk about, and many of the things we don't talk about, it's the loopholes that have created such a rot in the system all
That's
the way
right.
around
Yep.
that make all of these conversations harder.
Yep.
And that's the tricky part, is we have just allowed systems of loopholes to go on and on and on for so long.
Yep.
So.
All right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Sure. Oh, sure. But most of the gun violence happens with guns that are legally bought.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to say.
Yeah.
Stop.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I actually remember where my anti-gun stance came from. Is I had a relative who, when he was 18, he was showing his younger brother a gun. He did not realize it was loaded, and he shot him and killed him. A total accident, of course, but it's like these things happen.
Well, and of course, in gun violence, most people die through suicide.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what we want to do is have a lot fewer guns. Because when the opportunity isn't there, people don't take it.
That's so true.
And just one clarification, just
Mm-hmm.
because I have a friend that was a machine gun dealer. Machine guns aren't actually illegal in most states. They just have to be registered,
Mm.
and you have to go through a background check.
Mm.
But isn't that interesting? I mean, there are states that they are illegal, but not in most states.
Hmm. I did not know that, actually. That's an
So-
interesting fact.
But, and to the point, he would tell you, there have only been 2 crimes committed with legally bought machine guns since the law went into effect. I mean, in the
Wow.
last, like, 60 years.
Wow.
It's,
I did not know
when
that.
machine guns are used in crime, it's all through some kind of illegal means.
Hmm.
So, yeah. Well, yeah, if there's negligence on the parents, I'm all in. That makes perfect sense to me. I think that will, if that happens very much more, I think it will change how parents see th- their relationship to their kids with guns.
Yeah, just like my real life example, the parents were the one who kept that gun loaded.
That's exactly right.
And so, outside of the person who accidentally did it, the parents were also racked because they were the ones who
Yes.
left it loaded.
Yeah, that's right.
And, you know, he was 8.
All right, climate change.
Wow, big one. This one's so big.
It's just so big. Do you all keep up with, like at Asbury, is climate change something that's talked about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like, I've talked about this in the morning service, but I feel like this is the most important topic for social justice issues that we have ever faced. That the people that are going to be harmed are the poor,
Yeah, for sure.
the marginalized,
Yep.
those in countries with just happen to be in the South
Mhm.
Pacific where they are no longer going to have a country.
Right.
All of those people, we care about them. This is a social justice issue like I think we've never seen before.
Mhm.
And why the church isn't just like hopping up and down saying, do something, we gotta do something. I don't get it, I don't understand. Maybe you can help me understand. Why would the church not be so super aggressive this? Why would this not be talked about in chapel all the time?
Yeah, isn't it interesting, right? There's this, I do think that there's that when we all get to heaven mentality, right? And so there's
Yeah,
just
that's right.
no, and you and I, even before we left evangelicalism, we saw a lot more value. So I believed in climate change, even when I was deeply invested in evangelicalism, because you and I believed in
Yes.
this planet, and that this planet served a role in whatever
Yeah.
whatever next life is. Like we saw a value in that conversation, and I have more I don't know now than I ever had before. But I think a lot of it has to do with it doesn't matter anyways. When we die, it's not a problem. And I think there's this apathetic level, because it's funny though, right? Because they advocate for other issues
Yes.
in a very aggressive way.
Yes, you're talking about life.
Yeah, and I am talking about life issues. And that's an interesting
Yes.
dynamic, because
What a juxtaposition.
right.
Life that is at jeopardy from climate change,
Mm-hmm.
life of unborn.
Yeah, and the empathetic part I have in this is as I've put my, in reading like books, like there's no planet B and stuff like that, and it just really makes me realize how big this issue is.
Is that a great title, by the way?
Yeah, that is a good title.
There is no planet B. That's
Yeah.
such a good title.
It really, and that book really paints of like little things do go a long way. So some of the things we have done, like changing the way we cool and heat our houses and stuff, like those are they're incremental. I mean, they're not big swings by any stretch. But the importance that they're saying is someone's got to lead it. And so,
Right.
Even if America does a Green New Deal, which would be my position
Mine too.
on a biased
Absolutely.
level, that doesn't fix the whole problem.
Yeah.
And that's the complicated part. It's a huge step forward, but it's a huge step forward in helping someone lead something that's really important. So on that count, I don't understand why, if you care about any fundamental level of economics, any outside of even environmentalism, if you care about the structuring of how things are and you want jobs and stuff to sustain, you would want to advocate for a future where there's still jobs so the economies don't collapse. So on that count, I don't really understand why churches aren't jumping up and down. The spiritual stance is pretty ghetto to me, if I'm honest, but I think that's the hiding. And most of it, I think, is just fear-based, if I can be honest.
In what way?
I just think people are afraid to talk about it because it's so big and they don't know how to present it. Because one of the things that churches often have a bad habit of is like they want to present the certainty because, faith equals certainty complex. And it's like, this is what you can do. Just do this thing. Just give us $500,000. You get my drift. Like that's the things that they say a lot. How do you say that with this? They don't have a talking point, even if they do care about it. Now, tragically, I don't think a lot of them do. But the ones that do, they don't know how to do it because it doesn't fit the context of how they present church.
Right.
It works in our context because we're basically saying, well, we hope that this moves the needle, but we don't know. We hope.
And what the fuck is a common expression for us.
Right. Right, exactly.
That's not where most churches would be coming from.
No, not at all.
So
not at all.
Not just the words, but I mean the
definitely.
That's probably a safe assumption.
Yeah, most churches are not going to say what the fuck. Like I think that's safe to say.
But it just the attitude of like,
Right.
What? Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely, that's true. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Don't Look Up?
Yeah.
Is that a great movie?
Yeah,
it's so good.
I know the journalist who wrote that. Like, or I've seen him on interviews. It's a really interesting. It's such a great reporter.
Of course, obviously about climate change.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
It's just like
100%.
Don't look up because is it not becoming obvious that we are in trouble? Yes, that's right. Bring back Al.
Well, it is interesting because when I was at Asbury, which was now a really hot minute ago, we did talk about climate change, and most of the people, when I was there, none of us thought it was a hoax. No one I interacted with while I was there, we were all kind of like.
Well, it is a place of education. You would expect there to be science bias in
now
a good way.
Now, to your point, like what you said with churches, most of us are like, what the fuck are we going to do? What can we do? We're going to have like $60K of debt. Like, how are we going to solve this problem? Like most of us were scratching our heads like, did we go to the right school? Because if we want to advocate for climate change, we just signed up for a lot of debt. Like, did we make the right decision? Like, it does create this internal conflict, though, on a serious note. But yeah, even there, which is pretty conservative, like that was a real conversation, and it was taken really seriously.
I want to go to a bunch of other areas that are sort of, for example, one is it's a socialized issue for sure about education, universal education
Yeah.
through college.
Yeah.
And the second is about universal basic income.
Nice.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to take on.
Well, maybe say what they are first, and then we'll set some
Well,
goalposts.
so universal education is free education all the way through. I think they've settled on bachelor's degree. There was debate. But
Yes,
but
through
at least
bachelor's
through
at
at
least.
least bachelor's degree.
And then most places, master's and PhD depends on the subject you're in.
Right. Thank you. That's the part I was forgetting. In universal basic income, there's a debate on the amount, but it's basically if you're a citizen, you receive a check for a certain monetary amount every month just for being an American, basically. And so,
Yeah, but if we do that, won't people just stop working?
yeah, the answer is no, because it's never gonna, it'll never fund you enough. But what it does is for me, and this is a conversation you and I have had privately a lot, is it closes the income wealth gap that has gotten substantially larger throughout the years. And it's something I'm passionate about, and now that I am in a financially secure place to actually help advocate for some change on it, something I'm pretty passionate about in my current job. So most of you don't know, I just got promoted to being a manager of a department of 30 people. And so I don't oversee a budget, but I get a lot of say in it. And so there's advocation that I can make there because, I care about this so much because when one of my family members had to have a divorce, they were able to work at a dime store part-time, and they were able to pay the mortgage, pay all the bills, put food on the table for 4 kids, and that carried them through. They could do that with a minimum wage job. Can you pay rent with a minimum wage job today? There's no way. I mean, I'll level my mortgage, and I'll just say it, it's not even $600. And Andrew and I sometimes laugh splitting it, and we both have good-paying jobs. It's hard. Like, it's hard sometimes. And I have a very cheap mortgage with a very cheap interest rate, like cheaper than you can get anywhere else. And it's hard sometimes, even with what we have now, and that's why I care about it.
And by the way, where there have been study after study of this in real life, and in every case, people actually work either the same amount or more than they did without the universal basic income.
Yeah, I mean, Alaska gives you a version of it there now.
Yeah, right. There are some states that that have small amounts.
Yeah, I think
We're
Alaska's like $500 a month.
Advocating for a much larger amount. Yeah.
But isn't it interesting what people will do when you help them realize their value for just being a human?
Yeah, that's right.
And the problem is we put so much pressure on churches to do that. Like, oh, hey, you nonprofit organization, you go help people realize their value while you pay for your building and you pay for all your bills and you collect their money and then you give it back to them, right? Like, that's the current model. I'm laughing because it's impossible.
Yeah.
But that's the current expectations of, well, if people are struggling so much, they just need to find a local church that'll support them.
That is...
Like, you hear it said, and
we absolutely. I grew up, and I grew up believing it.
Right.
If the church were just doing its job, the government wouldn't need to have Social Security and Medicaid and.
Yeah, it's so silly in hindsight. It's so silly.
It's crazy.
And because there is such an importance in that people have opportunities, because outside of just seeing value as a human, one of the other big gaps in our society is opportunity gap. And a huge reason for
Yes, that's
that
right.
is education.
That's right.
Because we have to reckon with in society, and this started back whenever I was in school, and I feel terrible for all of you because it's going to be even worse, is my college education was the equivalency of a high school diploma when I graduated, as far as what my pay start would be in society. So just, going back in time to 2012, gas was higher than it is right now. It was $4 a gallon. I'll never forget, I driving away from college and I see $3.99.9. So it's $4 a gallon, and it takes me 6 months to find a full-time job, even though you apply literally every day. Then you get a full-time job, and you just think you're so rich, making $10.88 an hour. And that was my life post-college. That was not that long ago. That was 12 years ago. And so I can't imagine now where prices are higher. Rent is so through the roof. I could afford rent with just one other person. I don't think people can do that now.
And so I'll just say the general idea is that people have basic rights.
Mm-hmm.
And what we would include, you and I, as actually very progressive people on the political spectrum. Again, you don't have to be this, but that's where we are.
No, not at all.
Is that basic rights include freedom of speech, include the right within a family to decide what you do, to have personal property. It would include that everybody has a right to housing.
Yeah.
Everybody has a right to a basic income.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have a right to the same knowledge and opportunity
To
as other
education.
people. Yeah, because right now, the people on the top, they have access to so much information and so many resources to be successful that people on the ground have to spend their own finances to accomplish. Any of the growth and development I basically make, I went and pursued someone who's very successful, and they gave me a lot of tips. But you know what they did? They sent me a list and with Amazon links so that I could buy the books myself. Where these people get these things for free, right? Because of just where they're at in their society. And again, dealing with the talking of a devil, I shop on Amazon all the time, unfortunately. That's
it's complicated, right?
It's a really complicated conversation.
And if you buy a Tesla,
really complicated.
Complicated.
But again, when you think about those cars, what it's doing for climate change is a positive. And so it's really complicated.
That's right.
It's complicated. And that's the thing. Sometimes to make good moves, you have to entangle yourselves with really corrupt systems. And that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. One of our, somebody that comes in the morning service used to be involved in the Social Democratic Party of America on a national level a while ago, and she said their saying used to be, "We are on the left wing of the possible." And I think that's a terrific saying. It's this idea of, we're progressives. But we are also realist.
Right.
We also are trying to function in this world, and we're trying to get just the next best, get closer to the goalpost.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be able to see people here be able to afford rent and to have housing and to be able to have, I remember what I used to say when I was really when people would talk to me when I was advocating for myself to get a raise. Those are hard conversations, by the way, when you're in a business. They're not easy. They're not fun. And I remember looking at them I'm like, all I'm asking for is to be able to pay for my essentials and to be able to go to the fucking movie theater. I'm not asking for anything else here. I want to be able to go to the movie theater and buy a book if I want to. That's what I'm asking for here. Be able to do that and pay for my bills. Okay, thanks. Give me this raise. I'm not asking, I'm not asking you to pay me $6,000 a year.
Did they give it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, unfortunately, you have to get nasty in these situations. I'm so sorry. Just if anyone wants a free tip, the uglier you get, the better, unfortunately. That's kind of how the raise conversations tend to go in corporate America. So,
on that note,
yeah.
well, I think we want to just as a people, we want to really address issues. We don't want to just say, we don't want to relegate all the issues to other people.
Yeah,
To the-
absolutely.
As a church, we care about how we can best care for people and how we can best give basic rights
Yeah.
to people.
And what we're learning as this community, this unique woven thing that we're doing, is that we're also going to advocate for the systems that are best going to accomplish those things.
That's right.
And we're not going to shoulder all of it ourselves.
That's right.
Because that's our way of actually genuinely being a progressive community.
That's right.
Instead of just another version of standard fare.
I think that's actually probably the most important thing we can do.
Right. Right. Is actually advocate for where those means come from.
Yeah, for
and
systems.
Not and
Yeah.
not to put all the pressure solely on this place, this organization, these people to carry through. And that's why we advocate. That's why we have these conversations to talk about. And that's why we talked about the things we did, because we presented ideas, and so sorry, literally no answers on how to solve any of them. I don't know how to get to a place where, like a ranked choice voting, I don't know how to get other world leaders involved in climate change.
But if we don't have the goals,
Right.
I will never get there.
That's right.
So
So we'll
let's
keep
be
talking and
on the-
advocating.
And those of you who are younger, you actually are going to see change. One way or another, you're going to see a lot of change. And we want to be equipping
Mm-hmm.
younger people to have a sight of the goals,
Right.
to be headed towards them.
Yeah, and that's why it does matter too, like why at the beginning I brought up what Governor Walz did is that isn't unachievable even now.
That's right.
And how cool is that
Yeah.
to know that you don't have, in one state here even, you don't have to worry about gay conversion therapy.
And I'm not convinced we're that far from moving in good directions. Shoot, we just got gay marriage in 2015.
Yeah. I never saw it. I never thought
We
that
didn't
was
see it
gonna happen
coming,
in my
and
lifetime.
in like that, all of a sudden we have it.
Yeah.
That was just 9 years ago.
That's so crazy.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. We're going to come and take some juice and a cracker, and we're going to have just a little time at the table, and then we will go eat. Jesus didn't address the issues that we talked about today. I'm trying to think, but I can't, at least in the Gospels, I can't remember any mention that Jesus made of gun control. Now, I'm not sure, but that's at least to my memory. What he did talk about was the value of people. And we think that that's the principle behind all of this, is the inestimable value of each person. So even as we take this, we take it with that the value of every person to God and to us. We take this in the hopes of true life for person, now and for eternity. Amen. Thank you for joining us. Next week, you told us. Oh yeah, next week is the movie. So we'll just meet here at 3:30 and we'll be in Pride Hall. We'll have a movie together, and we will have an anxiety session together as we hold hands and sing Kumbaya. So great to be with you all.